Hi, my name is Lynanne Dellerman-Silverthorn, and I am the Recreation Cultural Services Manager with the town of Oro Valley. Um, so preserving the history of Oro Valley is incredibly important to me and my job here with the town. But today we are here with the Weede family, and we are excited to talk about two very important individuals to the history of Oro Valley, which are Vivian and Bob Weede. Bob Weede Sr., Robert, is not feeling well. And so if we're lucky, he will feel a little bit better, and maybe we'll get to plug in a cameo and you will get to see him. However, Vivian and their three sons, and I'll go ahead and introduce them by name here in just a moment, will be telling us all about the impacts Bob Sr. and Vivian have made on the town and the surrounding community. And we're so excited to meet you all. So Vivian is on screen next to her son, Tom. Tom obviously is a local Oro Valleyan as well. And then their other two sons are also joining us on screen, and that is Robert, Bob Jr., and John. And so with that, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to them and let them share some of the history of their family, the musical background they all come from, and their history with Oro Valley.
Good morning, Lynanne and John and Tom and Mom. This is great to get a chance to be together and to help kind of just talk about Mom, yours and Dad's lives and what you've done here for Oro Valley, and try to bring some family perspective to it from your three sons. So let me just start off by asking, and so that everybody understands, you know, where were you and Dad born? Where were each of you born? Where do you hail from, so to speak?
Oh my goodness, that's too long ago. I can hardly remember. Dad was born in Rochester, New York, and I was born in Swampscott, Massachusetts, small town, prior to moving to New York City. So Swampscott, I don't even think about that much, but that's where I was born. Swampscott, yeah. Massachusetts.
Yeah. Okay. So you probably don't miss the East Coast winters now that you've been in Tucson, Arizona for a couple of decades, right, or so. So.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of decades. I don't know. I can't remember exactly how many days, but enough to enjoy the sunshine. I'll tell you, after New York City and the gloom and the doom. But California too, we moved there and it was pretty sunny, but Tucson is the greatest. Tucson is the greatest as far as sun.
Yeah, it's a lovely place. So, you know, you mentioned California, you know, maybe talk about some memories that you have, or you and Dad have, of California, maybe around music, around, you know, raising your three sons there.
Oh, well, California. Lots of adventures in California for sure. Three sons, yeah, you guys went to school there and learned how to play basketball and tennis and all those wonderful things as you were growing up. And lots of music in California, that is for sure. Music in the schools, and California was a wonderful experience, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, Mom, I remember, you know, of course, and John and Tom do too, you know, many fond memories of growing up in a musical family and having music around us that you and Dad, you know, brought into the family, into the home. And it wasn't just opera, which was one of your first loves, right? But many different things, right? Playing different instruments and so forth. But I do remember, for example, I think everywhere we lived in California, Dad had a music room set up for you, so that you'd have a piano in it, right? And you could sing there. He would play the piano, and I just remember your beautiful soprano voice, which is just a booming, you know, instrument. And so he would have in every house in that music room a soundproof door, right, to try to, you know, limit the sound. And I can remember John and I probably, and and probably Tom walking home from Valley Verde Elementary School in Walnut Creek, California. And
Yes.
it was easy to find where home was because 2 or 3 blocks away, I could hear you singing,
Oh my gosh.
from our house. And somebody say, "Oh, is that your mom?" "Yeah, that's my mom," I would say proudly. So, that's some of the fond memories that I have of kind of growing up there.
Growing up with the opera sound around you. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Mom, I remember West Bay Opera in Palo Alto.
Yes.
And you guys had so many friends from the opera company that you and Dad both performed in the operas at West Bay Opera.
That's it. Yes. Regularly.
Regularly,
Yes.
yeah. And
Among
you went to rehearsals quite a bit down there, I remember.
Among other opera houses, but I tell you, opera is the most terrific, wonderful music outlet that a person can have. And I don't want to get started on that, but I was into music much earlier than opera.
Weren't you singing arias when you were a young girl, Mom?
Well, when I was 6 years old, I started working with a singing teacher at Carnegie Hall in New York City, and I sang a lot of folk songs that he taught me and songs for concerts. And then on top of that, when I became a teenager, I discovered opera, and that is the most wonderful, where you are using your voice to express fantastic emotions and stories to boot.
Yeah, and Mom, we were
Yes.
talking about this a little, and you talked about the difference between the voice as an instrument and like the piano, right, or the guitar or whatever as an instrument. What's the differences?
Yeah, the difference between instruments, this one is pretty obvious, is that no two voices are alike, whether you're speaking or singing. And when you're singing, you are expressing the music of the composer, you're expressing the story, and all of this through your voice, which is absolutely like no other instrument. Piano, the keys are always about the same. Well, violin might be a little more expressive, I think. But the voice is very unique, yes. The voice to be used as an instrument of expression.
And you and Dad sang together at West Bay Opera, right, Mom?
Yes, that's how I met your father, when I was studying with one of the very famous singers at the Metropolitan Opera House by the name of Robert Weede, who was one of the stars in that time of the Metropolitan Opera, and was studying with him. And one day there was my husband sitting in the room, and he was too wanting to be an opera singer, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, so that's how
Oh.
you and Dad met, right? You met when you were
That's
studying
right.
opera, and Robert Weede you referred to as his father, right?
That's
Our
right.
grandfather.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And my husband, yes, wonderful voice, tenor voice, and we did a lot of performances together and connected that way. Had a lot in common for two married people.
Yeah. Now, Mom, you went to a school when you were young, which is a famous school, right, in New York City. And
Yes.
people like Anne Francis, Carrie Fisher, Yo-Yo Ma, Deborah Winger went there. Tell us a little about that school.
Well, the name of the school is Professional Children's School,
Uh-huh.
which my mother found. And my mother, I should put in here, was a Russian lady, a very, very, very interesting lady. And when I was 6 years old, she decided that I should find a school like that. And it occupied 3 floors of one of the high-rise office buildings in New York City, right adjacent to Central Park. And it only, well, yes, I think it only catered mostly to artists, to kids that were growing up in the entertainment world. And when they had homework to do or they had to be in a show out of town, they could send their homework in that way. And we didn't have PE. We just simply had a music session in the early morning, and the rest was reading, writing, arithmetic, and French. And that was my first school that I went to, yes.
Yep.
And yes. Okay, I don't want to get too long-winded here.
Yeah,
And you know,
French became one of your most favorite language, right? Other than English, would you
That,
say?
oh yeah, in Italian.
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 Didn't you have to learn those because the operas are often in those languages?
Oh yes, anybody that sings an opera should be fluent in any of the languages they're singing in, because as we all know, when you're speaking in another language, you are expressing yourself in a little bit of a different way than your own language. So the language is important, very
Yeah.
important.
Mom, what languages do you speak other than English?
English, Italian fluently. Bob, you were born there in Italy, so we were all in Italian there, and then French and some German.
In
And
Russian?
some Russian
And,
too, right?
and some Russian, I should say, yes, before I spoke English, actually.
That's a lot of
didn't-
languages.
My mother didn't speak very much English, so it was a lot of Russian. And I have some funny little words in Russian that you don't want to translate that she used. Okay.
well, they may have to edit him out of the script if.
That's
No, I'm
right. That's
kidding.
what I'm not going to mention.
And Bob, you were born in Italy because mom and dad were there singing.
That's right. So, Mom, you and Dad were, of course, studying opera, right? And then
That's correct.
along came your first son. Two things on that. One is I do remember when I was a teenager approaching the age of 18, and I wasn't the easiest teenager. Dad would say to me, if you don't mind your P's and Q's, and if you don't listen to your parents, you're going to get a draft card from the U.S. Army and the Italian Army. So anyway, Dad, of course, was a serious singer too, right? And has a great voice. But so, what made him go from thinking about having a career, right, in music, right, to being one of the most successful salesmen in his industry?
Well, and before you go into that, how about if you do because you shared a lot of your really young life and upbringing. Tell us a little bit about Bob's and then go into that question, please.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
About Bob.
About my Bob, or which
Yes, your
Bob?
Bob.
Yeah.
About what did you want to know about?
Something
About Dad's upbringing, childhood, notable things from his childhood and so forth.
Oh my goodness. Well, of course he served in the Army, and then he, after he was, maybe 18 or so, he traveled with his dad, who is a famous Metropolitan Opera singer, traveled throughout the United States, and his dad, my husband, would travel with him and help him get ready for his performances, et cetera, while studying voice with him.
And he actually sang with his dad.
He did once in a while, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mom, the thing that I remember about Dad's childhood, even before that time, was because Grandpop, who was our grandfather, Robert Weede, I guess, senior, was on the road a lot because he was a performer. And so Dad and our uncle Dick went to a military academy when they were young, a boarding school. And so Dad spent a lot of his younger days in a boarding school, not quite year round, but they were there.
Yes,
so,
that's right. That's right. And that was during the years when Grandpop Robert Weede Sr. was doing a lot of performing in his life.
Right.
And wasn't around the house very much.
And that was back in Baltimore, Maryland.
This was Baltimore and Maryland. Yeah.
Dad maybe got some of his discipline and work ethic from that school, because I think, if I remember right, there was a military academy, but the teachers were nuns.
That's correct.
And the story I remember there was Dad is left-handed, but in those days they weren't so progressive, and they made him write with his right hand.
That's right. That's
so
right.
Dad's handwriting has always been a little difficult to decipher because of that.
Interesting our younger years and what goes on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. So, Mom, so he was thinking about, a career in opera and music, right? But then, as I said, went on to a career in business and in sales and marketing. What changed his mind, do you think, about that?
Well, maybe I want to say the appearance of John Weede, whom you just heard from, who is a wonderful, wonderful young man here with a lot of information to import for us. He was born, we left Italy, went back to New York City, and there was John 15 months later. And we sort of got busy, and Dad just decided he's a very, very, Dad is a very resolute kind of individual. When he makes up his mind to do something, there's no going back. You do what you have to do. And he decided it was just a little much to do all of that. So, and he enjoyed business, always did. And he just decided to let that be the lead of his life at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing the life of an opera singer is they're always on the road. It's you go from one show to the next, so it's a pretty challenging life when you have a family.
It is yes, very challenging in many ways, many ways, except for your singing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
challenging.
And he had a very long and successful business career, and was instrumental in a lot of business processes at the time that were pretty new, and innovative. And the thing about him, and he brought this to Oro Valley, as did you, when you came and started exerting your efforts to bring all the cultural attributes to the city, was that he was always very optimistic.
Very optimistic.
And
Yes.
just loves to meet and talk with people, right? And we can see that in the work that he's done here, that I know we'll touch on. But I can remember coming home, and John and Tom, I know you guys do too, from Dad would walk in from the house, and he'd walk into dinner, and we'd say, "Well, Dad, how was your day?" And he'd say, "I had a fantastic day." And, "Well, why was that, Dad?" "I got thrown out of 12 separate offices." And I looked at him, I can remember thinking, "What are you talking about?" "Well, I went in and cold call on 12 different businesses, and they all threw me out. But when they did, they told me exactly what they were looking for and exactly what they needed. So I'm going to go back and sell them everything that they need." And so he just loved the interaction with people. So then, when he retired, you went to and came to Arizona shortly after retirement, and not too long after you first visited. So what brought you to Arizona and to Oro Valley?
Thinking back, I can't really pinpoint it, but we were finished with California somehow, I don't know, and we looked around here and there, and frankly, we saw this mountain that I can see out the window practically, and fell in love with it, and fell in love with the sun and everything else, and it just became the place to be. And that's what we did. And they had an opera company, Arizona Opera Company, and lots of that going on. And it was something that we really gravitated to and enjoyed and still enjoy. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what was the spark? What got you and Dad involved and kind of kicked off, what became, the SACA and the GOVAC organizations around music and cultural arts? How did that really get started?
Well, you'd have to really talk to Dad more about that, and his very, very good friend who was very instrumental in starting this for our area, a man by the name of Dick Eggerding.
Yeah.
And they started, and they talked to the library, and they talked to the community, the town hall, and anyway, started a music program. And first of all, for the little kids, we incorporated the Tucson Symphony. They came out, on Saturday mornings and played some things for the children and explained what they were. And for me to start a child very early in something like music is very, very good and very wonderful to do, because they retain that for their lives. And so that program started at the library at Oro Valley. And then we got into the opera and did some previews there as well. And got some singers that were with the Arizona Opera Company to come out and demonstrate some of the music. And I would tell the story of what this opera was about, and got the children interested and got people interested. And long live the opera. We just have to keep it going.
I remember, Mom, that you would research the composers of the opera, and a lot of them had very interesting lives.
Oh yes, of course.
And so you'd mix in kind of their personal backgrounds.
That's right.
With the music that they were creating.
Yes.
And then have the live music there too. And
yes.
So it was a great mix of biography and history and live music.
Absolutely, and it did spread across our areas here, and we did several different occasions where we had those programs going, and got people to go to the opera. And as I say again, the rest is history. It opened up a very, very great musical world for our area.
I remember. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, with Dad, he went. Bob, you were talking about the kind of the cold calls he did. I remember him going into the schools, talking to the principals, and getting them to bring music into the schools, classical music, and I think they would play it over the intercom in the morning, and so it exposed thousands of kids to music. And I think Dad was really probably calling on his sales background to go into the schools and convince the principals, of all the benefits of it, and he was very successful with that for a number of years.
Yeah. I think it was something like 8,000 students and 17 schools, right, throughout the state in southern Arizona were impacted by this, right? What it really shows is, I think, Mom, for you and Dad, and it shows to other people in Oro Valley just what the effort of one or two committed leaders can do to make a difference, right, in the town. And you mentioned Dick Eggerding. There's another series, and I think an interview with him. So Oro Valley will have the full picture of all that went into that. The thing that's amazing, one of the things amazing to me was the 4th of July festival, where in the heat of the summer, right, up to 10,000 people would come in to hear the Tucson Symphony, right, set to fireworks in the park. And I have to admit, I never went because it was just difficult for me to do at that time of the year. But Tom, maybe you could talk a little about that. Did you see that?
Yeah, it was really special. It was out at the park off of Lambert Riverfront Park, and they have a natural kind of amphitheater there. And I remember, the symphony would come in there, and as it was kind of getting dark, the music was playing and people were just sitting on the grass, kids running around, and they would time it so that the 1812 overture would play, which has a really booming kind of finish to it with cymbals. And they timed and I think Dad was on the phone trying to make sure that the people who were doing the fireworks over, I think at El Conquistador, they were timing their fireworks to go off when the symphony was doing this kind of grand finale of the 1812 overture.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was really, really nice.
I'll add a little bit to that one too, because I had the honor from the very first year those took place to attend, and to make an additional comment about 5,000 to 10,000 people being in a park, and the fireworks being at the El Conquistador. Literally, they were far enough away that it wasn't the same as going to see a fireworks display that's right in front of you. These people came to see what Govac And your husband, Vivian, and his counterparts with that organization were doing, because the fireworks, unlike the majority of 4th of July celebrations, were not the centerpiece. It was the symphony orchestra, and that was Riverfront Park, and they created that area specifically so that Go Back could do that type of thing. So so it is a natural amphitheater with a hill, and my grandchildren who are now adults, well, no, my children who are now adults got to sit out there with me. And so it was a really neat experience, and so wonderful, a wonderful part of Go Back. So I will also go back a little bit on the Go Back story, which again, you can look at the Dick Eggerdine film as well. But it started out as a council or a commission to the town, and then they broke off and created this separate organization. But I do know that you guys have a little bit of feedback from the SACA organization. And so if you wanted to add some of that, because I know Robert Weede continued to work with this children's program and the Children's Symphony little program after Go Back became SACA. So if you want to talk about some of those comments, and then also Vivian, if you want to.
Maybe if I could just add one thing, going back to Bob's original question, that goes back to kind of the start, is that, our dad is always, had a great vision for things, and could see, sort of look into the future of have a vision for what he and others had, and then put that into motion and make it happen. And so, the two things that I remember about that are, number one, when my parents both moved to Oro Valley, was the early 90s, and Oro Valley was still pretty, young, I think, in those days. It was still growing. Some of the roads were dirt. I think it was Tangerine. I think one of those still had like dirt, wasn't even fully paved. And so they loved it there. My mom said they fell in love with the mountains, but I distinctly remember my dad saying, it's a great town. They really are forward looking, and there's a lot of parks going in, there's sports fields going in, but I don't really see much happening right now in the way of arts. And so I see a need here that if, with a little bit of energy behind it, we could put some energy behind arts and music and get that going in the town. And so it was a spark and a vision that he saw that then turned out to be what it was that we've been talking about. So he saw that early on. I distinctly remember that conversation. And the other one that I remember was when he came, I remember him talking about the 4th of July, and this was before it started. I remember him saying, we have this idea, we're going to get a bunch of people to come to this park. That's a pretty new park, because I think in those days, like you said, it was not, fully along, and we're going to get the symphony there. We're going to have the symphony come up from Tucson. They're going to come to our valley on the 4th of July. And then we're also we're going to convince the conquistador to do fireworks. And I was thinking, wow, Dad, that's a lot you got to make happen, right? Because to get the symphony to come up and perform out on the 4th of July, where it's not very cool out, and it's a time of year where you get monsoons and you can get lightning and other things, to get all the people. The vision that he had for that, and then put it into motion was quite a thing to see.
Yeah.
Yes, that was him. He was great in envisioning and then making things work out. And that is his great.
Yeah,
great,
and
great
then I remember, Mom, when the one we went to, because we took our kids there as well, and I have some pictures actually of our kids at the 4th of July, was that Dad was out helping park cars that night. He's, I think he was the MC that night too. He got on the stage and talked, but he was also like out in the parking lot directing traffic, and we're helping like put up barriers and other things. So he's always a roll up your sleeves kind of guy. He didn't want the focus to be on him. He wanted to be on the event and the performers and everybody else.
Yes. He is a wonderful man. And I hope you're listening, Robert, because that is the truth. And I love you very much. Yes.
And he would get out and promote too, as much as, I guess that's another part of his sales background. He loved going out and standing in front of the library and promoting events. He was a fixture at the farmers market He had a booth there, and he would
Yeah.
promote.
That's good.
He would promote soccer, and he loved that interaction. I remember going down there, and people would walk by, and he would just kind of gravitate toward them and just kind of start talking to them. And if they had kids, he would talk about, well, you could bring your kids to Saturday morning, and he just loved that kind of getting the word out there, and he was just really good at it.
Very, very good at promoting. Yes, absolutely. And we were at the library on many occasions with that in mind.
Yeah.
With an audience of children, and doing explaining music to them and everything. And yes, that was my husband. That is my husband. Yes.
I want to, Mom, I want to ask you about the Catalyst space at the Tucson Mall, right? But let me pause, but just for a minute before we kind of leave the go back story and so forth. I think as I talked to Dad about this and said, hey, we're going to have an opportunity to talk to Lynanne and the city about this and some of the things that he thought were noteworthy. The first thing he mentioned was the work that he and Dick Eggerding did to convince the city council at the time and the city government and others that having this 1% for the development of arts, right, that's assessed against new development, commercial, right, or other development in the city was a big deal to help make sure that the arts had a place and had funding. Because in spite of all the volunteers that make this happen, not just Dad but others throughout the city, right, it also takes money and funding. And so that's something that's in place and that has made a significant difference, I believe, in Oro Valley in terms of funding a lot of these programs. And not just in the past, but what will be on a permanent and ongoing basis. So I think he's especially proud of the work that they did to get that done. And it wasn't easy. I'm sure it took the same skills that he had, way back in the business world, getting kicked out of offices, and then he had to keep coming back until he got the order, so to speak. So, a few years ago, we went to the opening, our whole family and our wives and grandchildren too, of the Catalyst space in the Tucson Mall. And there's lots of things that go on there that the SACA organization and others, do to bring, artwork, music, and so forth, right, to the people, so to speak. And there's a space in there that's the Bob and Vivian dedicated space for digital learning and development for children. And I understand that hundreds of kids have gone through there, and that they have a number of activities available so people can record music, mix music, right, and just get in there and touch and feel, and really people of all ages. And so that's a significant program. Mom, I don't know if you have any involvement in that since it opened. Unfortunately, it opened kind of almost at the start of the pandemic, so it probably hasn't has much traffic. But any comments or thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to be better as all of this situation in the world lightens up a little bit. And but the fact that it's there is important to represent the music world and all the arts. And unfortunately, during this time, yes, you're right, it won't be as populated, but it is a wonderful thing right there in the mall. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I remember going to the opening of that, and there were quite a few people there, and it was just a really neat environment where you had all these people supportive of the arts, and that kind of energy in the same place. It was a pretty special experience, and I was able to go with my kids, and they saw it, and they were really excited to see Mom and Dad, their grandparents, get honored, and they still talk about it. It's pretty neat.
And your kids,
yeah,
Tom, are very involved in the arts, as young as they are, under 10, with drawing and painting
Mhm.
and music.
Yeah, yep.
As well.
Yeah.
And that starts early.
Yep.
Yes, we have to do that. And yes, your dad was wonderful. He is a starter.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing, like kind of what you were saying, John, is that and both you and Dad, Mom were able to, have these ideas, but not just have the idea, but then, do the steps, the hard steps that are, necessary to make things happen.
Yeah, and I think it was somebody that would comment, and maybe it was Kate, that in the nonprofit world, there are lots of people with ideas and bring forth great ideas and talk about those ideas, but there's a very small percentage of people in that world that actually do the hard work to put those ideas into reality and put them into motion, because that's where the really hard work does. So Mom, both you and Dad have that ability to take those ideas and really turn them into reality.
Yeah, and Mom,
Oh, I was just wondering really quick, and we can even do this after your next question, but because she brought up the grandkids, I wondered if you, and teaching young, I wondered if the three of you boys would talk about what exposure you all had with music. I know you touched on it lightly, but like if you played a specific instrument, or if you ever were involved in singing, and then also eventually here, tell us about your kids, or have your mom talk about her grandkids. And I don't know if all of you have them, but I do know Tom does here in Oro Valley. So at any rate, at some point, we'd love to hear about that as well. But go ahead with your question, Bob.
Well, I was just going to ask Mom, in terms of art and development and learning, and all three of those things are connected, I think. You wrote a book, right? And that book was, has been shared with many people, including the children of Oro Valley, along with all of the other, musical attributes that you and Dad have brought to the programs there. But maybe you want to just talk a little bit about your book and what was the inspiration for it, and if you have any advice for other inspiring writers.
Oh my goodness, my book. Make it sound like a big book, and it was a small book, and it was for everybody. And I got an idea when going to the symphony one night at the high school. They were giving a concert, and there was a problem with something backstage or whatever was going on, and it got a little confusing, and the music stopped for a minute, and then it continued on, and people were looking here and there, didn't know what to think, what was happening.
It was a cricket, right?
And what they found out later was that there was a cricket in the audience, and every time some of the music would start, or our symphony conductor would have a comment, this cricket would sing, and sing very loudly, and everybody was getting very disturbed. So I went home that night and I thought, my gosh, there's a book in here. There's a kid's book, and it's called, I called it Carl the Cricket Goes to the Symphony. And I made up a story about he was at the symphony, and he was so delighted, and everything that happened there during that evening for him. And the children really liked it. It was kind of a picture book as well. But Carl the Cricket had a wonderful evening at the symphony. And that was the book. And it seemed to do very well. At Barnes and Noble, they had it there, and here and there and here and there. And whatever, just an idea.
No, good for you. That's taking an idea and seizing the moment and
seeing it through, right?
Yeah.
If I waited the next day or the following day, I wouldn't have done it. So when you get an idea, you better go right for it. That's what I feel.
That's right. And small books are just fine. I just finished rereading Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. I think it's 98 pages. So there's plenty of wonderful small books and great stories out there, and yours was one of them, for sure.
Okay.
And it's been shared with all of our kids, right? And so maybe this is a good time just to mention, your grandchildren, our kids and so forth, right? I mean, at least from a musical standpoint, I mean, I have I have two daughters and a son. Your grandchildren, mom, and I would say our two daughters are not musical. They're more like me. They have to force themselves. And so I'm forcing myself to learn how to play the guitar. I've been doing that as kind of a pandemic outlet, and it's a lot of fun. It shows that you're never too old to learn something, right?
Right.
Our,
You
our
can express, you
yeah,
can express what you feel through the music.
yeah, our son
That's what-
Robbie, your grandson, is very musical and plays many instruments. So he's taken after you. And I do sing in the shower when no one's home, so that I can't tell you how I sound. So that's our musical background in our family.
I bet you've got a wonderful voice, Bob.
You're too kind.
Okay.
Well, I speak for our kids is I have three kids, two boys and a daughter, and as Mom mentioned, they do gravitate toward the arts. One of our boys is loves to draw, loves to sketch, has a really creative mind in that way, and our other boy is taking piano lessons, which I did. Speaking of kind of what we did and our exposure to music, I remember taking piano lessons as a kid, and didn't like to practice, and it was a real chore. And as I got older and I became an adult, I'd always wish, gosh, I wish I had stuck with that, because I could sit down at the piano and play. And we were exposed to a lot of music. I remember going to operas as a kid and being there, in the dark theater, and it just seemed really magical to see those operas and people up there singing. And but I never felt like I could sing, but I did feel kind of like, well, it's in our family, and I did try to pursue the piano, but just couldn't take the practice. So in the last year, I started taking lessons, kind of on and off, because I do feel that kind of like affinity with the kind of that creative side of our family, even if I don't have that ability myself necessarily when it comes to music. But yeah, I mean, it's I think of our kids, because they know of that kind of musical background, that they kind of are able to feel like they want to tap into it, which is pretty neat, I think, because I wouldn't necessarily push them toward it, but because they know that's kind of in our heritage, they're aware of it, and I think they gravitate toward it.
And toward performing. I want to mention my grandson, and that's Elijah. That's Tom's oldest one. He's 10 years old, and he's into learning Russian now. And he has the alphabet on the wall, studying it. And when he comes to visit, he'll speak something to us in English with a Russian accent. And he knows a few words in Russian. So you start them very early on things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing too, I want to just amplify something you said, Tom, as a public service announcement to every parent out there, right, or everyone who's taking up a musical instrument or anything for that matter. It's like there's a certain point where you want to give up and quit, like you talked about the piano, right? And I can remember with our son Rob, when he started taking guitar lessons, after 6 months he was ready to quit, and we continue to push him to continue to practice and work on it. And within a very short period of time, he turned the corner. And I think there's always a turn the corner kind of moment when it comes to music and when it comes to pursuing something like that you have to push through and reach. And now it's like it's part of his life in a way that wouldn't be there if that didn't happen. So I encourage anybody who's interested in music to think about that. Push through it, work hard.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
John, your kids?
Oh, yeah. I was just thinking. We have 4 daughters. And I personally didn't inherit any musical talent whatsoever. So they when they were younger, we'd joke because I couldn't sing them to sleep at night, but I would hum. And even my humming was really not very good. I think I got whatever talent I have, I got from my mom's father, who was an engineer. And so I've got a lot of left brain ability, but not so much on the other side. So, but our daughters are all beautiful young ladies, and they, our oldest danced for many years. So she did ballet and danced for a long time. So she loved to dance. Our youngest two, I would say, have some musical abilities. Kate, who is our third, she plays the guitar and she sings. She loves to perform. She was on the stage doing Annie a couple of years ago, and she likes to perform. And then Grace, our youngest, and Kate plays a little guitar, and our youngest, Grace, plays guitar. She's got an electric guitar. She's kind of a little bit of a rebel, but she loves to play the guitar. And so Grace and Kate actually some nights go upstairs and we can hear them. They don't want us to watch them, but we hear them in the room, and Grace plays the guitar and Kate sings. And so they do that together. So it's kind of cool. Yeah.
That's
Well, John, what you really have to experience is drums. So maybe Tom and I can pitch in and get him a drum set for Christmas or something. So
yes.
Well, if I can ask one more favor, so we got to hear a kind of you guys touched on each of the kids, but we didn't get to hear their names and ages from each of you. So to help make the story full, can you do that for us too, please?
Yeah, since I was just talking. So my oldest is Claire. She's 22 this week. Emma is 20. Sorry. And Kate is 18 and Grace is 15.
Yeah, and my oldest, Allison, is 34. Our second oldest, Brittany, is 32, and our son Robbie is 29.
And what about you, Tom?
So my oldest is Elijah, he's 10. And then our youngest are Luke and Amelia, twins, they're 9 years old.
Boy and a girl, just turned 9.
Luke and Amelia, yep.
Mm-hmm.
So mom, you have grandkids from 34 to 9.
That's right. And I was an only child, so I love it. I love it because I just love it. They're just precious, absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially when they're really young, under 10 still. And when they get a little older, they have their own lives, which they should have. And still, they are such a part of you. It never ends.
Well, Mom, we've talked a lot about what you and Dad have done right in Oro Valley over the years, right, to really bring culture and music and enhance for the people, the citizens in Southern Arizona, frankly. What would you say what would be your advice to people who want to get involved and that you'd like to see continue the work that you've done? What would you tell people?
Repeat that exactly to me again, Bob.
All the work that you've done to bring culture and music and enhance all those life experiences for people in Southern Arizona. What would you give advice? What advice would you give to people to continue that?
To continue that, because it becomes a part of you. And if you don't start it, like you just made the comment, when you start something, you have to see it through and finish it. Then it becomes a part of you. And for all the people that, really want to start the music life or their artistic life in their children, start it and see it through, and they will.
Yeah. And, it seems like I think that you and Dad would share this view that music is really it's a human experience, and it doesn't, it transcends cultures, it transcends, everything. And it's a way to bring people together in a very, significant way. Right. And that's one of the things that music can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
and for me, as I say, I started when I was 6, and that's because of my mother. I would always remember in the house going to bed, she'd be singing Russian songs, Russian folk songs. She loved music, and she just instilled that at an early age with me, and that's what happened. And absolutely.
I think Dad was also passionate about the idea that for kids, music is it's a good thing to learn in and of itself, but it's also connected to doing better in school and helping with the development of young people, not just in music, but just kind of in their school and in their life in general.
Absolutely. Yes.
As
I agree.
I've learned more about music and music theory in the last year, just studying the guitar, I can absolutely see that, right? It's like there's a structure, an organization, almost a mathematics around music, right? To your point, Tom.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
That helps in other aspects of learning and development. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in opera now we have language. Let's get the languages done as well.
Yeah.
And young people can learn language very easily.
Mm-hmm.
Well, speaking of language, Mom, you and I were talking the other day about plaisir d'amour,
Yes.
right? And that's a famous French song. And what does it mean in English?
Plaisir d'amour ne dure qu'un moment. Pleasures of love only last for a moment.
Yeah.
Chagrin d'amour dure toute la vie. The chagrins, whatever another word for chagrin would be, chagrins of love last for a lifetime.
I think one of the interesting
last for a moment, but the chagrins last a lifetime. Plaisir d'amour ne dure qu'un moment, chagrin d'amour dure toute la vie. And it's a very famous concert song that's used.
That's fantastic. Look, you can do it without accompaniment. I don't even think Tom was playing the piano for that, right?
No.
You're right on pitch.
Well,
You know what? What's interesting about that song is written in the early 1800s, I think, right? It's actually very famous. It's been covered by Joan Baez, by Judy Collins, by many musicians. And I didn't know this. It's actually the basis, the melody is the basis for Can't Help Falling in Love by Elvis Presley, written in 1961. But it just shows.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just shows the continuity of music and how music transcends, right, time and culture. So, and you and I, you challenged me to learn the piano to play that so that you can sing it. I'm going to work on that.
All right, do that. Do that. But it's so true what it's saying as well. The words, plaisir d'amour. Yes. Okay.
Yep.
I'm off stage.
Okay.
All right. I'll go ahead and step in because I know that we've been recording for a little while. And I just wanted to give everybody an opportunity to say one more thing. If there's anything else out there that you didn't get a chance to say, and then I'll go ahead and wrap things up.
Well, I guess I would say, Mom and Dad, thank you for all you've done. I live in the community and benefit from a lot of things that you do. I mean, I go to places and see the artwork up in the businesses that we go to every day. And so just from that standpoint, and just as an example for my life and being able to say, you have an idea and, you got to put it into action, and you guys are, proof that you work hard and you get that and you can get things done. So I really admire over the years all that you guys have done. Before you came to Oro Valley and after you've been here, and the impact that you guys have had on the community. So thank you.
Yeah, Tom, I would just echo what you said. I live in Seattle, of course, and I visit in Oro Valley when I can to see you and Mom and Dad and so forth. And every time I'm there, I'm just struck by what a beautiful city it is and how much you see arts and the culture come out. And it's with pride that I see that and observe that with what's going on, and knowing, Mom, that you and Dad and others, were instrumental in bringing that. So it's certainly something you should be very proud of.
Well, I also worked with Seattle Opera, and they are a wonderful opera company. and do wonderful things there as well, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would agree with what Bob and Tom said, and I think the impact that Mom, that you and Dad have had on the community has a lasting effect, and echoes through generations, if you will, like the 1% thing for art. I mean, that's all over town. When I was there last, I saw like the bus. You see bus stops, and right outside the hospital there was a statue there. Dad told me that came through that. So there's the impact that has a lasting impact on the community. And then just SACA is now still, I think, a very much thriving and ongoing organization that was started as a small idea that was put into action. So I'm really proud of you guys, and you have imparted the things that we've talked about into us as your sons, and then we've in turn imparted that on our children. And so the legacy impact that you've had in our lives and many others is just it's just awesome to think about.
Well, I want to thank you all. I'm going to get touched, but I get to benefit from your mom and dad's efforts. And I just wanted to mention to the community that it's really easy to take a virtual tour and see the wonderful art that 1% for art has all over the Oro Valley community. And there are generations of children that grew up with the Just for Kids music concerts that your mom, that Vivian was talking about, that your dad so highly promoted. He promoted until just recently. So right up into his 90s, really wanting to touch the youth in Oro Valley that positive way. And I think that's just awesome. And just back to the 4th of July thing, I can also tell you the only reason that folded is because that was a really young park when that started. And pretty soon the trees were so big, they couldn't see the fireworks at all. And then we had to figure out something else. But the impact on that, I did raise my children seeing it, but my oldest granddaughter, who's now 16, the last pictures of those, she was an infant there. So it went on, many generations for me. And I got to buy your mom's book when she presented at the library. So you and Bob, Vivian, have touched my life, have touched the community that I've had the honor of working with for 20 plus years. And I'm grateful to all of you for sharing your lives with us. And hopefully we'll get to see that little clip and add Bob in here, Bob Sr. And thank you very much for your time, everybody.